Longmont police are blaming the Longmont Housing Authority for creating confusion over a plan to search low-income rental units for drugs. The constitutional concerns we raised here last night are now getting national attention, clear up to the Washington Post. And while the head of the Longmont Police Department says they are done with the searches, he insists that they did nothing wrong when they went along on mandatory landlord inspections to ask if they could search for drugs.
We were quite clear on our intentions with people while we were there, and so we wanted to make them feel as comfortable as we possibly could with us, what we were trying to do and not trying to do. And so we weren't coming at it from a constitutional, we're going to arrest, we're going to seize, Fourth, Fifth Amendment kinds of issues, Kyle. We were coming at it from a perspective of how do we help make this place safe.
It's important. Longmont police did not need a warrant to search public housing with a drug dog if the tenants gave their consent, either because they were fine with the search or didn't know they could refuse or feared losing their housing if they asserted their constitutional rights. A letter to tenants from the Housing Authority about the mandatory landlord inspections did not say that the accompanying drug search was voluntary. One tenant told us she didn't consent.
We have inspections to see if our place is clean. I opened the door, I saw 2 cops and a canine. I refused to let the cops in, but one of the owners said I had to. I had to step outside while they were searching with the canine.
This is probably a good time to remind everyone that you don't give up your constitutional rights if you live in subsidized housing. Just like you don't give up your Second Amendment gun rights if you accept a farm subsidy, and you don't give up your free speech rights if you accept a federally subsidized college loan. State Representative Jonathan Singer, a Democrat who also happens to live in a rental in Longmont, wants some answers from police and the Housing Authority. And he acknowledges that even as an elected official, he's not sure he would know what to do if his landlord and a police officer knocked on the door.
Even as a lawmaker and as a renter, if my manager shows up with a police officer and says, hey, we'd like to take a look around, I would be so flabbergasted and flat-footed, I would probably open up my doors. And I have to say, that's not the way it should be.
Longmont's head of public safety said he only learned about the searches from us. Apparently only the canine team knew. The chief acknowledged that it could be confusing to people that while by law you have to let the Housing Authority landlord in, you don't have to let in the officer and the drug dog. But the chief says they were clear in their communication to residents. I put that issue to attorney David Beller of Wrecked Cornfield. He's a former public defender who led the Colorado Criminal Defense Bar.
There's absolutely a concern with that. And the Longmont Housing Authority is in fact a government agency. And so that means the Fourth Amendment protections apply both to them and the police.
Why do you think Longmont police have decided they're not going to do this anymore?
Clearly, this was wrought with problems. This is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment, of the warrant requirement, and it's important that the Longmont Police Department did the right thing, which is to simply step back and not subject themselves to any more scrutiny or possibly a civil suit.
Longmont police say because the Housing Authority didn't make clear in its letter to tenants that the drug searches were voluntary, they will no longer participate. The Housing Authority's operations director, who told us here yesterday that people who don't have something to hide shouldn't worry about a warrantless search. She isn't taking our calls anymore. Is the A-line working? The train to the plane? Sadly, no, there were some mechanical issues this morning, but that is honestly just a small nuisance compared to the bombshell report out this afternoon. Our partners at the Denver Business Journal used open records law to find a letter from RTD's partner on the A-line project. It suggested that it might not be possible to fix the train to the plane. Denver Transit Partners said that short-term improvement is not likely on the crossing gate issue, and there might not even be technology available to fix the issues that are holding up approval from federal regulators and resulting in fines against Denver Transit Partners. So you can add to the A-line's troubles a brewing contract dispute between the partners and no solution in sight. It looked like any other traditional Catholic Mass until you saw the bones on a table before the altar. The pews were packed at the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception on Colfax this morning. It was a gathering to mark the moving of Julia Greeley's body. She was exhumed from Mount Olivet Cemetery in May. Today marks 99 years since her death. Her bones were placed in a wooden box and blessed by a bishop. The people in the pews want her to become a saint. Church members paid their respects and the remains were moved to a chapel inside the cathedral. Julia Greeley's sainthood investigation started last year, and the Archdiocese here in Denver hopes to finish up its part of the process in about a year, and then things are in the Vatican's hands. President Trump has nominated another Coloradan to take over for now Supreme Court Justice in Colorado, Neil Gorsuch. Allison Ide has been nominated to take Gorsuch's place on the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. She'd be working in downtown Denver. She served on the state Supreme Court since 2006 and at one time clerked for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Ide was one of the names on then-candidate Trump's short list of potential nominees before he was elected and Gorsuch was appointed. Ide would need Senate approval before she can take the spot. May I make a recommendation? Point you towards something that didn't come from us but did catch our eye. Fast Company has put together this fascinating map of refugee movement over the last 2 decades. Movements of every refugee on Earth. The red and yellow and orange dots tell a different story than what you might imagine. For starters, just stare at the border between Mexico and the U.S. and see how many dots there are compared to the migration out of the Middle East and Africa into Europe. It is fascinating, it is captivating, and there's a link on the next Facebook page.
The redevelopment of Denver is driving people to do some drastic things. We told you a few weeks ago about the gentleman who actually tried to save his Wash Park home from being scraped, only to return months later to an empty lot. A group of neighbors in another popular part of Denver didn't want to see the same thing happen to a home on their block, so they tried a different tactic. They just bought it.
This block has a lot of history.
Consider the 200 block of South Lincoln a time capsule.
The homes were built between 1889 and 1895.
Filled with history buffs.
My name is Nita Lynch.
My name is Gertie Grant. And
their houses are a few numbers away from each other, but they also share a common address.
This house here is 213 South Lincoln Street, Denver, Colorado.
See, a couple years ago, these neighbors were fighting to get their block a historical designation. The homes were designed by William Lang, the same architect who designed the Molly Brown house. That's when 213 came into Gertie and Nita's lives.
It was going on the market, and some of us neighbors heard about it going on the market.
When we were afraid somebody was going to buy it and tear it down and build something that was not in context with the neighborhood.
So Gertie, Nita, and 2 other neighbors got some cash together and bought it.
Some walls had already been torn out when we bought it.
That was in 2015.
It's been an adventure.
An adventure filled with some incredible finds in the floorboards.
My dearest boy.
Including a love letter from a little girl.
Lots and lots of love and kisses.
100 years ago.
1916.
2 years after making that purchase, 213 is almost ready to make more history. The 4 homeowners have dumped even more money into the home to get it back to its original glory.
But I can tell you it's not a money-making project.
The real value is keeping Denver's block-long time capsule intact.
So that our grandchildren can see how people lived at the turn of the 20th century.
So about 1.5 years after they bought that home, the 200 block of South Lincoln got that historical designation, as you could see from the signs, which means if there ever was a new owner, they couldn't scrape that house. As you could see, there's still a bit of work to be done, but they hope to rent out that home to someone in the next couple of months.
One parking spot, a ton of Colorado outdoors gear. Challenge accepted. Anheuser-Busch just bought up a website that craft beer lovers use to rate their favorite small breweries. Want to guess how that's going over here?
It would be as if one of the largest restaurant chains in the country bought up Yelp.
And while he's gone, the rare flower he left behind has finally bloomed. Next.
The
most Colorado thing we saw today is a guy making the best use of Colorado's limited parking situation. Justin has one spot at his apartment complex, so he stores his kayak on the roof of his Jeep, and he tucks in the back his road bike and his motorcycle. That is a mess load of Colorado outdoor adventures all waiting to happen, crammed into one parking spot.
And we have the perfect weekend for your outdoor adventure. It's going to feel like summer around here. Not many thunderstorms and temperatures in the 90s. Outside right now, though, we are tracking thunderstorms producing hail, wind, lightning, and rain. Our high today in the mid-80s, a little above average, and we just crank up the heat from here. Storms that we're tracking tonight are moving from the northwest to the east-southeast and are setting up just outside of DIA along a line from Fort Morgan up to Sterling, where ping-pong ball size hail has been recorded. These storms will linger late into the night. Some rotation with the cells down around the Alamosa area, and the severe thunderstorm warning areas are something we'll be monitoring for additional hail development in the next hour. But drier air is working in with a major pattern shift tomorrow. As high pressure sets up, it will only allow in enough moisture for isolated storms. Temperatures will climb close to 90 tomorrow afternoon, and then we push into record territory for Friday, Saturday, and the weekend. Tonight, showers and thunder still possible, lows in the mid-50s. Tomorrow with sunshine, quick warm up, and then temperatures will come close to 90. We do push into the 90s as we move into Friday and Saturday. Saturday looks to be the warmest, hottest of the 2 weekend days. Still warm on Monday, so a preview of summer a few days before the season begins, and some mean clouds forming this afternoon out around Iliff.
Thank you, Kathy. There are craft brewers in Colorado none too happy that the parent company of Budweiser now owns the website that they rely on for honest reviews of their craft beers. They argue it would be like if McDonald's bought Yelp and all the restaurant reviews there. Fellow beer geek Brandon Ritteman volunteered to go to a brewery today. Tough gig.
From the outside, this feels like a family feud. My first beer versus a lot of the beers I like to drink today. Full disclosure, I like craft beers, including some now owned by Anheuser-Busch InBev. Joyride Brewing is not. They're a small brewery by Sloan's Lake in Edgewater. They're ticked about the RateBeer buy and most things that AB InBev is up to lately.
The infamous Super Bowl ad where they mocked craft brewers as saying we're all mustache-curling hipsters who only drink pumpkin peach beers. This is just part of their plan to really suppress craft breweries.
Joyride joined a movement apparently started by Dogfish Head Brewing in Delaware, asking RateBeer to pull down all reviews and mentions of their beers. Other small breweries in Colorado are making that same request.
They're under no legal obligation to respond to this. It's just a respectful request that if you're going to be essentially a propaganda arm of AB InBev, that be open and honest and transparent about it. And we don't necessarily need to be a part of that.
RateBeer says all ratings and reviews will remain completely independent. They didn't directly address the request to remove beers from the site, but said it's unprecedented for companies to ask for user reviews to be taken down. For Next, I'm Brandon Ritteman.
He didn't get to see his rare plant bloom, but it means so much to her.
I can stay here. I can be with all the memories, and it's good.
Something is ahead, but what? Thanks a lot, sign. Memories linger after a loss. For Bev Strohmeyer, memories of her husband who died last April, they're in full bloom, just like the garden outside her window.
I was not a gardener at all, really. I mean, I appreciated gardens, but I was not a gardener. But 37 years ago, when I married Stroh, I began to realize what a passionate gardener he was. He never met a plant he didn't like, I think, pretty much. This is a Red Rocks penstemon. Well, that's a May night salvia. And this little guy is the big blue sea holly. And I admired the agave plants because they're so gorgeous and sculptural. And so when he saw those agaves and how beautiful they are and how sculptural they are, he had to have it. And that was one of the first plants he placed in the cactus garden. April 11th of last year. So it's been a year and 2 months. Stroh was ill for, he began to decline quite significantly, probably 6 years ago. It got intense towards the end, but you know, we were able to keep him home until the very last 3 days in hospice. So I've been struggling, you know, with the anniversaries are hard. And so my neighbor Carol just happened to call and say, I've always wanted to see your backyard, and she and I are walking around back here and we're looking at things, and we walked out past the cactus garden. She said, "Is that a bud?" You know, and it was very tight. I must say, frankly, I never expected to see this. So it was right during the time when I was really struggling that it first began. It's literally growing inches a day. So it's the craziest thing. You could imagine the plant being passionate, you know, to put up this incredible stalk. You know, I really feel like that's a tribute to him, because he invested himself so much in this place and in this garden. It's been really a great affirmation that I can stay here. I can be with all the memories, and it's good.
Our next question: what in the world is this flower? It's been spotted growing in Denver. Our friends at the Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado were able to identify the odd-looking plant for us. Tells us it's a dragon's tail or Dracula plant. That thing's freaky. It is not a common plant in Colorado. We're told they tend to get stinky and they attract a lot of flies, so even if you love it, maybe not the best choice for the garden. It's a sign of something, we're just not sure what. Plus your feedback next, right after the best of your captions for my awkward senior photo in Denver Style magazine. Well, it's my hop shirt from Rockmount, you know? It's a sign, all right, but it's honestly not a very helpful one. It just says ahead. What's ahead? Don't tease me, sign. Lincoln Rieger took these photos near Dahlia and Eastman in the University Hills neighborhood of Denver near the Welshire Golf Course. Absolutely no idea what is ahead. Perhaps if you drive the road, you'll find out. If you see a sign that makes you do a double take, email it to us next at 9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. Tons of feedback tonight, including a really good point from Bob Harvey and Dan Qualman, who both noted that I made an offhand comment that confused the idea of refugee migration versus illegal immigration. Our recommended map for you to check out shows refugees moving about the world, not people who are illegally immigrating. Mike and Brenda write, craft beer people have surpassed wine people on the annoyance scale. That's why you try to be a craft beer geek and not a beer snob. What's the difference? Beer geeks care what they drink. Beer snobs care what you drink. And a lot of folks talking about the Longmont housing story. We will keep on that, and we'll see you next time.